The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Be a movie, yeah, we're gonna be a movie
Starring everybody
and me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Be a movie, we can watch it all develop. Starring everybody
and me. We'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in. We're gonna start right here.
And we are going to start right here. Hello, you are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast, triple feature. I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, we are looking at 3 major motion pictures, one of which is still in theaters, and the other 2 are available PVOD. We are looking at Barbie, directed by Greta Gerwig, currently in theaters, and really, like, the only thing anyone's talking about right now. I mean, look, we're going to talk about Sisu and the Machine, but if you're listening to this, you came to hear our Barbie review. We're here to give you a Barbie review. We know what's up. But this is triple feature, not damn you, Hollywood, so we had to talk about 2 other movies. Shut up. We had to talk about 2 other movies. The other one is Sisu, directed by Jalmari Helander, which is a historical action thriller set in World War II in the Finnish Lapland area. And then finally, we are talking about The Machine, or as Mark Hamill said, the motherfucking machine, which was directed by Peter Antencio, and it was based on a comedy routine that went viral from Bert Kreischer about his trip to Russia when he was in college. And joining me tonight, against his will, is Ronnie Adams, otherwise known as your Dungeon Master, formerly of the Screaming Boy podcast. I did it nice for you that time.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's still up in the air.
How you doing tonight, Ronnie?
Oh, I'm Peachy Keen Jelly Bean. How you doing?
Good. So Ronnie, a little ways back, I ran him off of podcasting because I was mean to him on the Source Material podcast. And he eventually wanted back into the fold. He left the cult, and then eventually he said, I want back in, because nobody.
I said I would do a few shows.
Nobody leaves Pop Radulich for too long, and we were trying to figure out some stuff for him to do. We were trying to figure out what's some Ronnie centered stuff that we could do together that would make him happy, make me happy, and wouldn't be too stressful for either one of us.
And then he went totally off the rails and made me do Barbie.
I didn't make you do shit, motherfucker. Okay. We were all right, sorry, Evan. We were talking about how nobody in the crew, like Robert, as he reminded me on the last Damn You Hollywood, he was like, I still have my no from 2016 when Barbie was supposed to come out with Amy Schumer. I'm applying it to 2023, and I still have one more nope left. And at the time, I don't think Alexis wanted to do it either. And nobody really, we didn't really know what this Barbie movie was going to be. I wonder now, knowing what we know, if I'd had more people willing to talk about this, considering this has become like a cultural phenomena. But
because of the money it's raking in and the cultural phenomenon and everything that's happening in the news behind it, I bet they're kicking themselves. I'll be honest with you. I mean,
Maybe.
I'm not gonna hold anything back. They're kicking themselves over this.
It's entirely
I got
possible.
it. You don't. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so Ronnie was like, trying to get on my good graces. He was like, well, maybe if I take one for the team, Mark will give me special favor. I won't, but it was a nice try.
I said, hey, Mark, won't you, me, and Pat do, like, Sisu? It's an action movie. It'd be guys' night. And he's like, yo, let's throw Barbie in the mix, too. And I'm like, what? Oh, no.
So, is your girlfriend's name Laura?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell her she's in the wrong thing. She's currently in the queue watching instead of watching on YouTube.
Oh, you're in the queue, Laura.
Okay. Let me fix that. There we go. All right. Tell her go to YouTube. So anyway, so yes, Ronnie trying to gain special favor with the cult master was like, what if I take Barbie? Surely he will give me special favor. Nope. But it was an opportunity for us to talk about, because then you were like, I want to talk about Sisu with you and Pat was like, I don't want to podcast anymore unless it's boxing. So we threw Sisu in here, and I was like, I knew I was going to talk about the machine at some point, so I figured that's how we ended up with this. By the way, I don't know if you can see the artwork I created for tonight, but I feel like I accidentally created the polyamory flag with, like two burly men on either side of a pretty young blonde. You know what I mean?
Lord have mercy, Mark.
What?
Lord have mercy, Mark.
So Ronnie, let's talk about Barbie. And normally this would be the part of the podcast where I'd be like, tell me what brought you to the IP. Why would you want to talk about this Barbie movie? Let's face it. We could sit here and talk about cousins and sisters and whatnot who played with dolls, and maybe we touched a Barbie here or there, but nobody gives a shit. They really want to know what we think of this movie, and there is a lot to talk about here, and we still have 2 other movies to get to, so let's just jump right into this one. Some demographic information, like I said. Barbie's a fantasy comedy film directed by Greta Gerwig. Greta Gerwig, you may know from her earlier work in film. She actually wrote the forthcoming Snow White movie with Rachel, what's her face? Yeah. She wrote and directed Little Women, which was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. She wrote and directed Lady Bird, which was nominated for Best Director and Original Screenplay. And she wrote Hannah Takes the Stairs, Nights and Weekends, Northern Comfort, Frances Ha, and Mistress America. She's got some acting roles, and she's worked on a little bit of television, like Saturday Night Live, The Mindy Project, How I Met Your Dad, etc. So that's her.
Yeah.
I can already feel your animosity. It was written by Gerwig and Noah Baumbach, who is a man. Just want to point that out. It's based on the Barbie fashion dolls by Mattel. It is the first live-action Barbie film after numerous computer-animated direct-to-video and streaming television films. My daughter used to love those things. The film stars Margot Robbie as Barbie and Ryan Gosling as Ken, and follows the two in a journey of self-discovery following an existential crisis. And it's got a huge cast in here. So I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it yet but are interested in what our thoughts are. So I'll give kind of just the briefest of brief understanding of what this movie is. Yes, Barbie has an existential crisis, leaves Barbie Land, goes to the real world. Ken also goes with her. Ken's exposure to how the world operates vis-a-vis gender norms causes him to go back to Barbie Land. And he's very much motivated by the fact that he feels unappreciated and disregarded by Barbie. And he is utterly defined by whether or not she pays attention to him, like a normal guy. And so he goes back to Barbie Land and introduces the patriarchy. The women of Barbie Land, the Barbie dolls, succumb to the patriarchy because at first blush, it's easier to just give a man control. And so then the Barbies working with a mom and a daughter from real life, and the Allen doll, who I didn't even know existed. Devise
the doll was my favorite though.
Yeah, Michael Cera did a good job there. Devise a plot to take back Barbie Land from the Ken, and lessons are learned and ideas are discussed, and that's really where I want to start tonight. Briefly, just to get this out of the way early, I loved this movie. This is my favorite kind of movie, and there's only 2 kinds of movie, Ronnie Adams of the Screaming Boy podcast. There's movies where stuff happens, and there's movies where ideas are discussed. And if you're not into ideas being discussed but not a lot happening, you're going to struggle with this movie. A 9 and an 11-year-old boy did. Now, they didn't like it. I took my kids today, my 2 kids, and we'll call them my stepson, to go see Barbie. And like I said, the 2 boys liked it well enough, but we're struggling with a movie where not a lot happens, but a lot of heady ideas are discussed. My daughter, the feminist, thought this was the bee's knees and was really into it, and she's 12 going on 16. And I, being who I am, while I do enjoy movies where Tarzan swing across chasms and stuff like that, I like a nice idea movie, and I'm okay with stuff not happening. Ronnie Adams.
Yeah.
This was my favorite movie of this year because of the heady topics discussed and the way in which it was discussed. On top of, I know, on top of what I think are some fairly superior craft elements to this movie, which we'll discuss momentarily. Why don't you tell me why you hate me, this movie, and Hollywood at large?
I don't. Now, Mark, you know
Yes,
that
sir.
I don't hate you. I love you.
We'll see what happens by the end of this podcast.
We're heading down that road. I listen. Okay,
Yes, sir.
so when I I give you a hard time. When I told you I would do this movie, I stand by my word and I will do it. But I will say this: the best part about this movie for me, I will just get this out of the way, is that I was there with my girlfriend and her youth group. The end. No. All
right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. I didn't hate the movie. I'm not going to say I hated the movie. There were like laugh out loud parts of it.
Sure.
There were things discussed, and while I didn't agree with some. It just goes back to the old Al Bundy trope of the guy's the idiot, the wife's always getting one over on him, and it just makes I get it's old. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm all about empowering women to do things. To what's the word? If they can do anything a dude can do, right?
Yeah.
So, my girlfriend's a youth pastor. Stereotypically, that is, you think of a male role,
right?
Things like that. No. I mean, and she's amazing at it. So, so I'm all about, saying, okay, yes, a woman can be president. Yes, CEOs, COOs, but not at the expense of making the guys in the story all a bunch of blithering idiots.
Can we stop there and let's discuss that? Because I think because I had a funny feeling that was your take. I've also, for those that are maybe new to the podcast, friends of mine that are watching maybe for the first time tonight, I don't just do this and then walk into the woods to live obliviously. I watch and listen to other people review film, people who are professionals, people who are like us, amateurs, but have exponentially more followers. So I watch, and I don't just watch the conservative guys like the Critical Drinker or Midnight's Edge. I will watch like critically acclaimed, and those guys tend to lean more progressive. I'll read stuff from like Chris Stuckman or some of the other guys. And point being, I like to take an array of the Red Letter Media guys, half in the bag. I take an array of reviews and opinions and kind of process them myself, see what I think about it compared to what they think. And I know that guys like Critical Drinker and Midnight's Edge were there. I haven't seen a lot of the Midnight's Edge stuff, just the thumbnails, and all the thumbnails are like the most woke movie ever, Barbie. Barbie is anti-man. I watched the Critical Drink last night. I watched the Critical Drinker's review of Barbie, and his thing was, this was written by a movie by people who hate men. I kind of see where you're coming from. I don't agree. I actually vehemently disagree with that. This movie doesn't hate men.
Yeah, can I just interrupt real quick and just say I don't think the movie hates men.
Okay.
I think they're just painted in a bad light.
See, I don't agree with that either. But go ahead. Go. Let me first throw out my argument, and then let's bat this around for a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
So, classic movie structure. Yeah, we start in a place imperfect, and we strive for better. We strive for perfection. We go on an arc. We go on a journey, and we come out of the movie different than we started. Yes, the Kens are presented as somewhat simple. Ryan Gosling. Let's just focus on Ryan Gosling for a moment. Ryan Gosling is presented as somebody who is defining himself by the relationship with Barbie, right? If she's it's said right in the beginning of the movie. Helen Mirren, who's narrating the movie, mentions Ken only has a good. Yes, Helen Mirren was great in this. Ken is only having a good day if Barbie pays attention to him.
Barbie pays attention to him, yeah.
Except that's relatable for a lot of guys. Okay, you can't tell me otherwise. There's plenty of guys who, not obviously everyone, but the apple of their eye, the person who has their affection, when that person doesn't pay attention to them, it can be rather crushing. And we're talking extremes here. We're talking exaggerations. This is for entertainment purposes, but this movie. But I do feel like that was pretty insightful, in an interesting way to present Ken, because one of the things that I like about this movie is that it works at the surface, but also at a meta level. Because you're meant to watch this thing. It's one of the things Critical Drinker actually had a real problem with, which I didn't understand. But the Barbie Land is presented as the collective imagination of anyone that plays with the dolls. And there's this tacit recognition that Ken is almost an accessory to Barbie. And so if the child wants to play with Ken vis-a-vis playing with Barbie, then Ken is valuable. But once the child sees no value in Ken's relationship to Barbie because she's busy doing Barbie stuff with Barbie, Ken loses all value. Imagine that as a human being, because these are now sentient creatures. This is like a Pixar movie. Ken only has value if someone else sees any value, and he has no inherent value, which is what then drives him once he gets to once he sees that there exists an entire world of men who define their own sense of value. They are not defined by someone else's perception of them. He goes crazy with power. He's like, oh my God, I have untapped potential. and the idea that this is a sort of collective anxiety that men have in Barbie Land, and that's why I mean, like, there was some of this stuff was, I think, was pretty brilliant insight, and he comes back, and if you've ever talked to a woman and they go, yeah, there are just some days where I don't want any control of my life at all. Like, I'm good. Take control of everything, Mr. Man. There's a reason why we have like master and dominant relationships and whatnot. It's funny. I listened to Jesse Takes the BDSM Quiz podcast that we did last year. I don't know if you know about this. Yeah, I made Jesse publicly take the BDSM quiz, and there was one of the questions. He was a trooper. Still the high point of my comedic career. But my reason for bringing that up, and then I'll shut up and let you retort some of this, was there was a couple of questions regarding, would you ever just give up your entire autonomy and be someone's 24/7 slave? That question's in there because people have done that. Like, there are people who will just live as someone's human pet because life in adulting gets too hard. If I see one more meme about how difficult it is to adult, I'm going to lose my mind.
I think that's one of my... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So, well, just to finish my point, and I really will shut up. So when you have Ken who's like, I can be something without Barbie, and I can spread this word to the men, to the other Kens, and then he does, and the women's reaction is, yeah, that's fine. Take it over. It's really rough being a woman, being a boss woman in charge. I was like, wow, there's a lot going on in this movie. There's a lot of editorializing about the human condition and experience, and I loved it. But none of that for me tracks as anti-man. It's definitely an exploration of some difficulties in gender norms and equality in relationships.
Okay.
This is where you rebut me.
Yeah, I'm gathering my thoughts on this.
Yes, sir. Okay.
The thing about it is as I said, like, I didn't completely despise this movie as you thought I would. I thought there were some good points in it. I thought there was, I mean, the craft of the movie was really good. I thought when the movie opened up and Barbie was like pretending to drink out of a glass and
that was
slow it
brilliant.
down, that was brilliant. I was like, because that's how they were played with,
Right.
And he was waving to everybody and not driving the car, and I was like, this is actually really good.
I haven't seen an IP this cared for with love in a long time. Like, these were people who sat down with a pad and paper and like, what is Barbie? And wrote down their memories and their thoughts, and and like wrote down ideas about playing with Barbies as girls would play with Barbie.
Mhm.
And was like, that needs to all be in the movie. Like we watch so much high IP stuff and we see that the IPs are not cared for at all. They're utterly misunderstood or not represented at all. And this is why the Chris Baileys of the world reject them. And then here's Barbie, who's like, we know how you play with this toy. It's in the movie.
Right.
Mwah.
Right. Yeah. I thought that was actually quite a bit of brilliant filmmaking in that.
It really
in that
is.
sense. It really is. And then, but it was just the overlying storyline, I mean, if you don't, I guess I just didn't look into it as deep as you did. Because legitimately, I don't go into these listening to the critics and things like that. I watch it. I watch it blindly, without reviews or anything like that. And then that's how I form my opinion about it. I don't want anybody else's opinion. Then I'll listen to you guys, and then anybody else can just kick rocks because
after Robert and I have ruined the movie for everyone.
Right. Well, yeah, but no.
I know what we are.
Well, there used to be a happy and a not so happy, and now there's just not so happy with movies anymore. No, I'm kidding. Sort of. But it's one of those things where, like, when you watch the Ken-off, at the end, the battle, the Spartans facing one another, and they just
I have to talk about that for a second, but you first.
But it's just one of those things where, like, they didn't even get that right. It's just everything that Ken and the other Kens did was just a big goof.
Yeah, it was really okay. I would agree with you there. If you're looking at that as you're trying to support your argument in court that this movie hates men or this movie treats men poorly.
Well, I don't think it hates men. I just think that
it makes men goofy.
Yeah, the underlying to me on that part, on just that part, there were other messages in it, which I'm all about telling little girls, you can do anything you want.
Well, I was going to say, I agree with you. The Ken-off was really silly.
It was so silly.
Yeah, it was over the top silly, and it was almost like. So I had two problems with the Ken-off, and this one of which is a craft issue, and one of which goes to what you're talking about. Of there's some of this where we're serving a master here that doesn't really properly represent men the way you want to in that particular scene, and it's really the only time that this happened for me. But one. This is a talky movie. It's not Martin Scorsese. I mean, this isn't fucking The Irishman.
No,
or Oppenheimer for that matter.
Yeah, I'm not expecting like freaking, The Departed or anything.
But this is a talky fucking movie, which, let me say this now. We're about 22 minutes into this, and somebody might be wondering, should I take my kids to this? No.
No.
Okay.
No.
No. If your kid is not double digits in age, we're talking 11, 12, 13, do not take anybody less than the age of 10. To this movie. This is not, and this is where I agree, but I agree for different reasons. This is not a family-friendly movie. This is not a happy, light, slight, Trolls World Tour, movie meant for, general family audiences. This is a heady, philosophical, existential film that is talking about ideas well above the average kid's head, well above the foot. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to look like the biggest fucking pretentious fucking asshole in the history of the history of YouTube.
Gosh.
But I'm going to say it anyway because I'm me and I have to. This movie is too good for the modern audience. It's that good for me. Like, it is. We don't deserve something this good. And what I mean by that is the kinds of stuff this thing is talking about on multiple levels is so far above the average audience member's heads. Doesn't mean people are enjoying it. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not saying, I think at a base level, people
think you're drinking this Kool-Aid.
No, sir. No. Hear me out. I understand people are enjoying this, and that's not what I'm talking about here. Lots of people are enjoying it. This thing made. We're going to talk about the money until tomorrow when we discuss Oppenheimer on Damn You Hollywood. I'll get into it then. But like, this thing is making all kinds of money. People are happy with it. That's fine. But like, it's also way too smart for the modern audience. Like, this thing is really brilliant in a lot of ways that people aren't going to get. And that almost makes me sad. But my point is, like, there was so much going into this movie that they were talking about. You don't bring a kid to that. Like, I brought my kids. my kids, well, one, Jonas is 9 going on 60 and
Yeah,
has been to
Jonas is like a little old man.
yeah. And so like if your kids are movie trained and they see as many movies as I do and talk about it and have a father who they listen to's podcast, so they speak the language of film, you can get away with 9. But this movie is not meant for little kids. And so like Barbie is a little kid's toy. You bring the little kids to the little kid toy movie, and then like they're talking about existentialism. You're like, the fuck? No. I'm telling you, don't bring your kids. This is not for them.
I saw where you went to the theater and you posted pictures of your kids.
Mm-hmm.
I saw your daughter, and I was like, oh no, this is further down the road for her. He's poisoning her mind. No.
Yeah, she's well poisoned as it is. But back to you in the Ken's thing, so we can move this on, talk about something else. It was one of those things where like there was a tone in the movie, and they were trying, and so there was 2 things. This is where I was getting to before. It's a way talky movie. There's not a lot of action in this, which is fine with me. But for a lot of people, they'd be like, nothing happens in this movie. What the fuck? And I feel like the Ken off was a studio note. Yeah, like come on, we have to do something. We got to put some action in this. We need a battle. We need a battle of Pelennor Fields and Barbie. Like we don't, but we're gonna throw one in anyway. Like okay, but it's fucking Barbie. What do you want them to do? Like I don't know, have them hit each other with sports equipment because that's a thing guys do.
Right.
It really comes across as a bit shallow and a little insulting. And I think it was just like they were between a rock and a hard place with that scene. And it was like, this is the best way we can do what you're asking to do that doesn't really fit the film.
Yeah. And I mean, like there were several different things that didn't kind of, to me, match the, I mean, like, okay, so there was a dark tone in it. Which
the very first time Barbie's just like, has anyone else been thinking about death?
Yeah,
everything fucking
just like chilling at this big party. Does anybody else ever think about death? And then just like the record scratch.
Dude, I let me tell you something. I laughed hard at this movie. There were times I was the only one laughing. I think it's Matchbox 20 when they were like, I push. Yeah. Bro, I was fucking dying laughing because again, the duality, the Gemini, I can see the guy's perspective, the women's perspective. I am as critical of men as I am praising of men. Same with women, at least I try to be. And some of the commentary about the broness of men, I was dying laughing because I'm okay being self-critical. And when they did push, I'm the only one I feel like I got that joke in my theater this afternoon. I'm crying laughing. But there are other parts of the movie where I was crying like sad. I was crying emotionally. A lot of the stuff about mothers and daughters and the playing of toys and the giving up of toys was very Toy Story feeling.
Let me tell you that I absolutely love that. Love that. I mean, that was a great, because we've all, I mean, like we can all see that moment, whether it was us or if you have a child or anything where they stop playing with those toys that you used to sit down with them or that you bought them and that were special. And they're like, and it's that moment of like, oh man, they're growing up. And that's when you start thinking about you have that existential crisis of oh my gosh, does anybody ever think about death? Kind of, it was such a good moment. It was very sad. Like I said, I'm not coming into this like, and I'm not going to like, I can't say that. I'm not going to just completely hate it. No, I always try to find something good about it. Unless it was that remake of the Fantastic Four, there's nothing good about that. And I've been talking about that for years now. But yeah. So, but no, there were really good parts in it. I really, I mean, like I enjoyed it.
I was gonna say we are 30 minutes into this and haven't actually talked about Barbie. We've been only talking about Ken, so we should probably talk about that.
Okay, Margot Robbie.
Well, not. First of all, her and Ryan Gosling absolutely deserve Oscar nominations for their performances, especially Ryan Gosling. So? Yeah, no, they were outstanding in this. Like the rest of the cast was whatever. Like they were, everybody was serviceable. Though Michael Cera was funny. Everybody else was good. Just
that supporting actor and Michael Cera.
I was gonna say everybody else is serviceable to good. Everyone's like playing their roles and hitting their pitches. Nobody's really outstanding, but Margot Robbie, I think, and Ryan Gosling, especially Ryan Gosling, fucking nailed it and just cracked it out of the park. But I do want to talk about some of the ideas captured in this movie, because we've only been really talking about the Ken stuff, and that's a big part of it. But it was also one of the things that triggered you, the critical drinker, and a lot of other people, and I think a little unfairly.
I wouldn't call it even a trigger. It was just like a kind of one of those moments. Like that's
I'll defend your position this way. There's a lot of probably oversensitivity because in many other parts of media, and Robert and I have documented this on 1,000 other podcasts, the treatment of men in modern fiction is poor.
It's terrible.
So when you see it again, it's one of those where you might not even have any tolerance or patience for it anymore, and then you miss the juice, you miss the goodness that's in this movie that they're talking about.
So okay, I will put it this way.
Yeah.
One of my favorite shows to go back and watch is Roseanne.
Yeah.
And that is only because of John Goodman.
Sure.
And the portrayal of his fatherhood, Dan Connor being a father, being a husband, everything else. Yeah, he was funny, he was goofy, and he let Roseanne yell and carry on and everything, but he was a man about it. You know what I mean? He stood up for his family. He took care of his family. He wanted to provide for his family. And, there was no shame in that. And there was no shame. Like, one of my favorite moments is when, like, he gets aggravated with his sister-in-law. When he found out she was in an abusive relationship, and Roseanne took her in the back in the bathroom to clean her, to wash her face and everything. All he did was grab his jacket and hat and walked out the door.
Right.
And I was like, he's about to whoop somebody. And he did, you know, and it was just like, he was a protector. And so that's not shown a lot in modern film or modern TV. The guy usually is the guy that just hands over the credit card or the wad of cash and says, okay, blah, blah, do whatever you want. And then, gets yelled at and emasculated. And then,
it's like my grandmother used to say about the presentation of Italians: are either morons or mafia.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And look, Robert and I have said that, like, men are not presented well in film. They're either morons or they're rapists. It's like, there's like no in between.
Exactly.
But I don't think that's this movie. I'm going to stand firm on that. And you're welcome to your opinion. I just
absolutely.
strong feelings here.
I mean, like, I can see your point. I really can. That's why we talk things out.
Yep.
But it's just that's what I took away from it. And then maybe it'll take a second viewing for me to actually see it. But I
would recommend it, and I would see this movie again if there's another person in my life that wants.
I'm gonna wait for on demand, but
but I would say watch it again with an open mind about how they're presenting men, and kind of pay attention to Ken's journey, because by the end of it, but that last talk that Ken and Barbie have in the dream house, where she's telling him, like, you can be anything you want to be separate from me, and we don't have to be in a relationship for you to have value. And and then she leaves him, and he's sort of left to live his own life, go on his own journey, free of Barbie. And I would not say that's a negative message about men. I'm going to talk about.
I kind of missed that one, I guess. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Like you said, that's why we have this podcast. That's why we dialogue. We talk about things, because I'll tell you, well, I'm usually in your position with Robert, who's like pointing things out to me. I'm like, oh, that's right. That's kind of brilliant. If we don't talk about some of the points of Barbie, people are going to be mad at it. So one of the things I wanted to bring up was I really enjoyed the idea of, like, the consumerism aspect of it. The idea that, like, Barbie was supposed to represent hope, and it was supposed to inspire. And instead, a lot of people got the wrong message from Barbie. And it was about the physicality. It was about the unrealistic proportions on Barbie. I think scientists have, like, looked at it and be like, if a woman were shaped that way, she'd fall over because her boobs are too big or something shit like that, and her waist is too small. It's ridiculous. Things of that nature. And I do think Barbie is a very polarizing intellectual property in American culture. And I think that's really interesting. I also think, like, that kind of self-effacing philosophical insight in this movie was pretty brave, because I'll be the first one to say Hollywood's full of cowards, but to kind of look at your own IP and go, it's problematic in places, but it's also awesome in places, and isn't the world full of duality and conflict? I'm like,
do you think that's a result of people just looking for conflict, or do you think actually people have conflict with it?
I mean, well, as I said, there's two schools of thought represented in this movie. There's Barbie's school of thought, and certainly the people who make, Mattel, that make Barbie, and go, here's this toy. This toy is good. It will inspire girl. Look, all of the things that Barbie can do. She can be everything from a teacher to an astronaut to a president. You can be anything from a teacher to an astronaut to a president. You can be anything you want to be. The world is your oyster, girls. Be like Barbie. Be anything. And then there's this polar opposite point of view presented by the angry teenage kid, whose name I do not recall anymore. And she's going, no, girls look at Barbie and go, well, I'm never going to look like that. I'm shitty. Have you ever talked to a woman? Like, that's kind of a thing they go through. And I think acknowledging that in the movie was brave of the filmmakers and Mattel, because who wants to get shit on themselves when they're trying to sell you stuff? But I think I have to say again, to acknowledge that in the film, and it's a huge deal. It was a big pillar, a big thematic pillar of this movie, was this idea of, well, is Barbie good or is Barbie bad? And wow. Barbie's struggle with, we wanted to bring hope and potential, and that's not happening in the real world. I mean, the sort of meta commentary on the inequities between men's salaries and women's salaries and the expectations. Funny, I got asked a question today by one of my girlfriends about why women are held to different standards than men. And I went, how much time do you have? Because it kind of goes back, centuries about gender norms and expectations, and those set the double standards, unfortunately, and still wading our way through that. Barbie comments on that, Ronnie. Barbie is commenting on that about, I think it's America Ferrera who does the big monologue at the end. Yeah. And it's a brilliant, I actually turned to Lily because Lily on occasion had to memorize a monologue to audition for parts in musical theater and such. And then, so I've showed her, I've talked about this on podcasts before, Paul Heyman's pre-Survivor Series Invasion monologue.
Oh, that was brilliant.
Yeah, and a couple of other ones that I really like. That's how Whitting's done. America Ferrera's monologue about the duality of women's existence, right up there. That's right there between Paul Heyman and That's How Winning's Done for me. It was brilliant. And I think, there was like I said, there were times that only I was laughing in the movies or I was reacting viscerally, emotionally. Every woman in the audience reacted to that. Like there was a bit of a cheer. And it's brave of the filmmakers to effectively communicate that so people could. This is a very relatable movie, I think, for both men and women. It's one of it, I think, the thing that's brilliant about it. All right. So I've been talking for a little while here. I want you to kind of weigh in on some of the female-centric themes that I've been talking about or that you were thinking about with this movie.
I guess, it hit home with me, but I guess it just didn't take.
What hit home with you specifically?
Like some of the, specifically, okay. So as I said before, I'm all about telling girls, and I've always felt as long as I was old enough to be able to realize it, that Barbie, with all of her forms, I'm like, as a kid, I'm like, why there's so many Barbies? She can't do all this at once. Astronaut Barbie, whatever, and you go on. But now I'm like, okay, so if a young girl is, interested in space or space exploration or anything like that, not only can she do, she can play with whatever she wants.
Can we draw a parallel between Barbie and G.I. Joe? Because boys could project themselves on any single, or He-Man for that matter.
Yeah.
Single He-Man or as fantasy, as potential, as hero worship. Any boy could project themselves on any number. You could see yourself in any G.I. Joe or any He-Man. The one that best suited you, your hopes and dreams and fantasies, you could project yourself onto. If you were a girl who happened to be playing with G.I. Joe or He-Man, you had two choices in both cases. You had Lady J and Scarlet in G.I. Joe, and you had the Sorceress and Teela in He-Man.
You had She-Ra.
Okay, no. Stay with me. And then, so with Barbie, you had this wide array of Barbies you could project yourself onto as a girl. You weren't going to get a lot of options with Ken, which the movie does comment on. He's just Ken. It says it right there in the artwork. But because what girl was going to project themselves onto Ken? Just like what boy was going to project themselves onto Lady fucking J?
Right. No, and that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
They had all of these. They had all of these. What's the word I'm looking for? They had all of these
options
and careers. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Careers that she could they could see and be interested in it. Doctors and everything else. So I was like, yes, absolutely, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Every child should feel like they could do whatever they want. They could grow up to be whatever,
sure.
to be whatever they want. Because I mean, like a little peek into my past, I was told in 3rd grade that I would never, I told a teacher, I was like, I'd like to be a pediatrician when I grow up. You'll never be a doctor because your grades aren't good enough and you're just not getting smarter. That's what I was told. Or 5th grade actually. And I was like, well, dang, that hurt, kind of one of those things. And I never told anybody that until later on. And then I think my mom took her earrings off and then it was, she was ready to fight, but I had to pull her back. But, it was just, that's why I think every child should feel that they could grow up to be whatever they want to be. And I think Barbie, Barbie is a wonderful gateway into that, the toys and everything. And then you really see that in the movie as well because of all the different Barbies around.
Yeah.
I think there were some wonderful messages in it. But I just I guess in my male brain, I couldn't get over the fact that they made, that this one part of it.
If you're hyper focused on the bit, they're distracting the Kens, and it's a lot of jokes that make sense. As your friend who loves you, get over it. It's not like we don't take pot shots. It's not like we don't take pot shots at women in the vast and sundry history of 100 years of film.
Did I say that?
Okay.
All right. I didn't say that they didn't. But it's just it wasn't hard for me to get over, but it was it's just kind of that's I guess that's one of those my pet peeves.
Okay.
So it kind of stuck out toward for me. Now, did I enjoy parts of the movie? Yes. Like I said, I laughed out loud. I enjoyed it. I was sitting there with Laura, my girlfriend, and she enjoyed it, and we talked a little bit of probably during the movie. But I mean, as you said, this is not a kid's movie. So they've taken a kid's property or a kid's toy and made it into an adult movie.
Yeah.
Even with some of the jokes. And the other thing that didn't fit for me at first, it was kind of like he's there for, I guess he was just there for the name and was Will Ferrell.
Okay.
I just, for some reason, it was just it was funny. He did a good job. But
I was going to say, Will Ferrell was playing Will Ferrell in every movie.
Yeah, but this seemed just like we need something. Give Will Ferrell a wheelbarrow full of cash and tell him to come in.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and substantiate your point by saying this movie has some serious craft flaws. Because I am hyped. When I say the modern movie-going audience doesn't deserve a movie as good as Barbie, it's because of how well the themes and messaging was handled. There are problems with the actual movie craft. And so if I can just get over myself for just a moment and okay, you've talked for 40 minutes now about themes and whatever, we get it. What problems are with this movie? This suffers from a lot of movies the same problem a lot of movies have that deal with theme over story. And that is one, first of all, the pacing in this movie sucks. If I wasn't so drawn in by a lot of that stuff, I would have struggled with this movie because it does not move well.
You know me, when people start pulling out names words like pacing and I'm just get over it. No, you're right.
Yeah. This movie clocks in. Hang on. This movie clocks in at just under 2 hours. It felt like fucking 3. I was like, am I in Oppenheimer again? How long is this movie?
Right. It was a little long. Then I realized it wasn't that long at all.
Yeah. How long have we been in this movie for?
Yeah.
Yeah, that third act is interminable. That's coming from a guy who loves Return of the King and has no problem with the 12 endings of that movie.
Yes, same here. Yeah,
yeah, like this. It was again in one way. The writing is brilliant because it's like we have all of these great ideas, and for the first time, I think in cinematic history, they were well represented on screen. The problem was the actual story, the plot, which was slight enough and light enough to hang a lot of these heady themes on, and I don't have necessarily a problem with that. But it seemed like they were struggling. It was almost like they had index cards of really funny scenes and things they wanted to talk about and dialogue exchanges they wanted to have. And then someone said, how are we getting from one scene to the next, though? What's the story? How are we going to keep the bouncing ball moving? And nobody had any fucking ideas. That's a lot of this movie for me. It's Barbie essentially is broken and goes to the real world to get fixed. And then it's just a lot of like, well, we're going to chase Barbie around for a while. And then they kind of threw in this stuff with Ken, which brings up a lot of great ideas. But it was also like, we don't know what else to do with Barbie at this point. So, so we'll have Ken go back and take over, and he has to be overthrown. I will tell you this. There's a lot of brilliance in this movie and almost like a serious tone for like the first half. And that second half, especially the third act, is overtly silly.
Yeah.
So there's some tonal problems with this movie as well.
It's almost like it's like they grabbed two kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like they grabbed your daughter and your son and said, "All right, you play with the Barbies for a while, and then Jonas, you come in and finish the story."
Kind of. It was almost like and I don't really think that this is what happened. It's like Greta Gerwig wrote the script, and and then some like Hollywood executive Warner Brothers executive looked at this and were like, "Can we get Amanda to rewrite this because this is never gonna fly?
Right?
No one's gonna come see this."
How are we getting? How are we?
I would say to say it this way: like, can we get Amanda to fix this because like we can't trust these fucking women.
It's like I said, like just like cards of ideas. They're like, how are we switching from idea to idea? Just go with it.
Yeah, right. And now Barbie's here, and now Ken's doing this, and like, all right.
Yeah. She floats down to her car for goodness sake.
Not enough fucking story to fill up 2 hours, and it fucking showed. Good things. So those are like my only like craft complaints, my craft issues. There's tonal inconsistency. It's poorly paced, and the story is almost too slight. This movie is entirely held up by its themes and ideas. And I will tell you this also, the star of this thing, the 2 stars of this thing is set design. This is Barbie Land needs an Oscar nom for set design. Absolutely. It looked amazing. And then the
entire thing looked phenomenal.
And then Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling were pitch perfect. They were amazing in this movie. They were in many ways holding it together.
That's the thing. Like obviously you've spoken about the chat before. We have a chat where a bunch of us talk about it, and I usually lurk in the background and say something snarky and leave.
Quietly seethe.
Yeah, quietly seethe and then say something snarky and leave again. But I've read in there where people have called Margot Robbie box office poison.
I mean, we showed with numbers in a TikTok on my TikTok how Margot Robbie movies haven't made any money since I, Tonya.
But is it her or is it the movie choices that she's making?
I'll substantiate that point. I mean, she's been in some garbage. I mean, I liked Babylon, but nobody saw it. Her Harley Quinn movie sucked. Most of the stuff that she's Harley Quinn in has sucked.
She's phenomenal as Harley Quinn, though.
Right, but people don't go see those movies for whatever the reasons are.
Right, but I mean, like she's the first Suicide Squad was just, but she was great in it. She was great in.
Again, when we say box office poison, it's just she happens to be in movies no one's going into the movies to see, and some of those movies happen to have sucked. But look. Robert said at the time, the bane of movie existence, and the thorn in Ronnie Adams' side started
say
that
that.
TikTok. Started that TikTok saying Margot Robbie is a brilliant actress. Her movies just don't make money. Here's the fucking proof.
Okay, so I didn't see that part.
Oh my god. Love you, Ronnie.
You know my policy, Marcus. But
I want to start to close up shop here. I have jerked this movie off enough. I'm going to give you the final word. Anything else you want to talk about?
The fact that you would make out with everybody that has made this movie.
Hoisted by my own petard.
Yeah, just line them up, boys. We're going to kiss every one of them.
I'm going to give everybody who worked in this movie a dainty hand job.
Oh man. Oh,
you started it,
Laura. I'm sorry. But no, I mean, like there are good points and there are points I don't agree with in it, or or didn't enjoy, I should say. It's not like some kind. To me, it wasn't a progressive liberal poisoning of our children's minds.
Oh, have you seen the demonic possession stuff?
I don't even want to talk about that.
That's your people.
Hey, listen, I don't say that. Yeah, crazy Christians. But no, like, listen, and I said this before, as a conservative Christian male in this country,
yes, sir,
that watched Barbie, do I think it is a liberal? Well, those crazy liberals trying to point. No, there are. It's a bit of a progressive film, yes, but there are good points in it to lead young women into realizing they can be more.
Yeah.
No, so yes, there are points that I did enjoy. There are parts that just didn't sit right with me. Yes, but that's with every movie. I watched a Kevin Sorbo movie that was just absolutely the most right-wing thing I've ever seen. Things about that didn't sit well with me at all.
That's fair.
So I try to go into movies like this with an open mind, trying to watch a movie. That's what they are to me. They are entertainment, and if I don't like them, I walk out. I have learned to do that now. I used to be the guy that.
Did we lose you, Ronnie? Hey, I don't know if you can hear me, Ronnie, but you're muted. You went away. So come back when you... Oh, there you go. You're back.
There you are. You started spinning, sir. But anyway, as a whole, I enjoyed the experience.
Okay.
Because visually stunning. Absolutely visually stunning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Margot Robbie was a perfect Barbie. Ryan Gosling took a lot of roids to look like that.
He's awesome in this movie. I really enjoyed Ryan Gosling.
Is he a brilliant actor in this?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes.
Everyone should go see him in the Refn movie that he was like. I think it's Only God Knows, which we reviewed on here, and he sticks his hand into a woman, and that's the movie review where Sean and I ruined The Notebook for everyone. So you're welcome.
Oh well, it's happened before.
I will never not reference that movie and us ruining The Notebook anytime Ryan Gosling is brought up. All right, you ready to move on?
Let's get some Sisu action going on here. Or
all right,
whichever one you want to do next.
No, we're gonna do Sisu. All right. So as I said, Sisu is a historical action thriller written and directed by Jalmari Helander, set in Finnish Lapland during World War II. The film follows a former legendary Finnish commando, like we all boys wanted to grow up to be, and gold prospector who attempts to secure his gold and defend himself from a German death squad led by a brutal SS officer. The film stars Jorma Tamila, Askel Henny, Jack Doolin, Mimosa Willamo, and Ani Tamila. According to Helander, the 1982 film First Blood, one of my favorites, and real-life Finnish military sniper Simo Hrea, who fought against the Red Army, served as inspirations for the film. Sony Worldwide Acquisitions acquired the film's worldwide distribution rights alongside Nordic countries, and then decided to team with Lionsgate, former studio, to release the film in North America. It debuted at the Toronto Film Festival on September 9th, 2022. It premiered in Finland January 27th, 2023. It was released in the U.S. on April 28th of 2023 and has received positive reviews from the critic, but most importantly, the critical drinker. Um, this looks like it had a budget of about 6 million, whatever currency this was, and it made 13 million. Yeah, it
13 million sticks and rocks, sir.
yes, sir. In the United States and Canada, it was released alongside Big George Foreman and Are You There, God? It's Me, period, and was projected to gross around 4 million from 900 theaters its opening weekend. It made 1.4 on its first day. It went on to debut 3.3, finishing 8th. It is a 94% from 158 critics on Rotten Tomatoes and a 7.7 out of 10. On Metacritic, it's 70 out of 100. So one of the things that when I read it's been nominated for, it's actually won a bunch of awards at the 55th Sitges Film Festival for Best Film, Best Actor, Best Cinematography, and Best Music in 2022. So, Ronnie, you wanted to talk about this movie. I will only say that I really enjoyed it. This is one of those, when the Critical Drinker talked about it, he mentioned how we don't get a lot of movies like Sisu anymore, which is a man's man getting bloody and dirty, violently taking people out and like pushing himself well past the point of exhaustion and broken bodiedness to come out on the other side victorious. This is you talk about like Barbie being an inspiration for girls. Sisu, the inspiration for men.
Yeah.
Men.
Well, what I wanted out of this movie was a World War II version of John Wick, and that's exactly what I got.
Yeah, I can see the comparisons also to First Blood.
Absolutely.
I think it's like West Virginia cops. Where it's like West Virginia cops like chasing down Sylvester Stallone in the woods and him having to outthink and out-violent them. By the way, some of the violence in First Blood to this day is still very visceral and awesome. Oh yeah. There's a scene in Sisu where he throws mines at the SS officers
through smoke, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they threw smoke grenades, if I'm not wrong, if I remember right. Yeah, and then he just takes landmines and hucks them at him. He just he yeets a landmine into a guy's head.
Yeah,
and, it's one of those things where like I never would have thought of to do that, and it's just
generally you don't touch landmines is the issue.
Yeah. I mean, like if I found a landmine, I'd just pee myself. But it's one of those things where like. I just wanted a good action movie, and it had a good story because it's simple.
Yeah,
a man retired from the military to find his fortune,
right?
And at the end of World War II, the evil, evil, these Nazi soldiers come through and decide to keep being themselves and take what isn't theirs, and he wants it back. And that's as simple as it gets. And thankfully, I Googled it. His dog didn't die through the entire film.
That's good. Yeah, one of the things I liked about this movie that the Drinker brought up was it's largely a silent film. Yeah. There's not a lot of dialogue in this movie.
Not a lot.
It is definitely about like the perseverance of man, against all odds, which I think is a movie. And I don't want to just limit this to men, but I think it's a movie that anyone can identify with, when you can kind of relate to this in any way you want. This movie is about, very visceral violence, but you can sort of put your own template,
man.
You can put your own kind of template on it and relate to it any way you want. This is about pushing yourself through the uphill struggle of life to come out on the other side victorious and, and waving off and batting away all the things and that would bring you down. And that's it. It's a really simple movie. It looks gorgeous. There's like the Barbie gorgeous, and then there's the Sisu gorgeous, and it's two kinds of beautiful.
Sisu is it's not like when you think gritty, you think of like Mad Max and things like that.
Right.
No, it's beautiful, but it is gritty. It's dirty.
I think it's and Alexis might be able to speak to this better than I can, her being the professional artist, but it takes a special kind of film brilliance to make bleak look gorgeous.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, and that's where I was going with that. There's this bleakness, that, and because it's at the end of this war, because that there's so much violence and there's so much, there was so much terror and everything that was going on. Where do you find yourself at the end of this?
Right.
Well, he was looking for his fortune. He was looking for a way to survive. He was looking for his nest egg and everything,
But he's also alone. He didn't want to people anymore.
He didn't
I
want
think
to people. I mean, he'd peopled enough. He'd killed enough.
I think it's an interesting thing to explore through any art form. This one being film, the idea of at the end of a traumatic event, just feeling like I need to drop out of society for a while. I need to not society for a bit. I need to kind of be out in the wilderness. It needs to be me against nature, me with nature, and let the chips fall where they may. But I don't want to be a part of civilization right now. And I think it's an interesting because the movie sort of touches on it, but in a very faint way. It's implied, but it's not spoken of directly. But this idea of the idea of being in a war and the mental effect that it has on you, being that society is a little too much for me right now. I kind of need to be out in the wilderness. The other side of that is what war does to people in terms of turning them into monsters. Because, it's very easy to just sort of flippantly like, oh, well, they're Nazis, as if like people were born Nazis and Nazis are born evil.
Right. No, transformation there.
Right. But the other side of that is, again, having the experience of being in the SS and being through World War II. At no point did they have to pursue this one lone old man fucking out prospecting for gold. They he made no difference to the war effort. None.
They had no clue what he was doing either.
Right.
They just stopped to pick on him.
Right. This was literally about this war has turned us into monsters, and so that's what we'll be.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all that was. And it was, what is the purpose of monsters but to bring the hero out in us and and be defeated by the hero. That is their purpose.
Right.
And that is a big part of Sisu. It is, war creates these broken individuals, and some of them will become monsters that need to be taken out, and some of them are going to become derelicts and vagabonds and people living outside society because war shredded the social contract and their ability to relate to others.
Right.
And that's in a movie where guys chucking landmines at people.
Right. Well, I mean, like, okay, so what I saw was a man that had gone to many lengths to survive a terrible, terrible war.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, after a point in time, he retires and he just doesn't want to be around society anymore. Maybe because he doesn't feel like he deserves to be, or maybe he just doesn't, it could be PTSD. It could be anything.
Right.
But it's just one of those things where he just wants to live his life and be alone and be left alone. He's got his dog. He's got his mining. Just leave him alone. And then these guys come along and decide to pick a fight that they can't win.
Yep. And they don't know that. And then after a while, it's like, why can't we? How are we not taking out the old man?
Right. They literally send a tank after him.
Right.
And it doesn't work.
And then Grandpa takes out a tank.
Right. And at the end of the movie, he walks into a bank, bloody, beaten, broken, and walks in like a man. And just like, I think as something like I'd like to make a deposit or something like that. Right. And it's just like he just lays this gold down there, but it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, he walked into like Bank of America. He's like, I'd like to open an account now.
So, give me my debit card.
All right. Anything else about Sisu? Because I mean,
it's worth a watch if you like action, if you like a good story. And this okay. So as wordy as Barbie is, Sisu is not.
Yeah.
Or as much
I could not have picked more contrasting movies, by the way.
Right. These are two, absolutely opposite movies. Action, no dialogue. Lots of dialogue, no action.
Yeah, or silly action. Here's the thing I will also say about Sisu before we wrap up and move on to the motherfucking machine. Hi, Laura.
Stop that.
Oh, have you not seen the Metal Hammer of Doom where we used to do that to Rob's girlfriend?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Well, don't tell me your girlfriend's watching. This is your fault, Ronnie Adams. I don't
know.
The ghost of Robert Cooper.
Yeah.
The only thing I wanted to say about this movie in terms of like craft elements, they make the bleak sort of like the grayed out hellscape landscape of this battlefield really come alive. The action is very visceral. The thing that I would tell people is, and this is something the drinker brought up, and I'll echo it, not a lot of films like Sisu out there right now.
Right.
We talked about like the action sequence at the end of Barbie is a little over the top silly. So if you're, other than like Extraction 2, if you're like a dude, and Robert and I brought this up with Extraction 2 when we reviewed it a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago. If you're a guy who's like wanting, movies for guys who like movies with a lot of action, a lot of violence, a lot of blood, a lot of gore.
Thanks, Spike TV.
They're just not making a lot of those movies anymore. And if they are, they're going like straight to streaming services and nobody knows about them.
Right.
Part of the reason why we do this podcast and part of the reason why I'm like tapped into review culture is guys like us, The Drinker, Midnight's Edge, a bunch of other people, find these movies and we're here to recommend them. If you are of that ilk, if you are looking for a movie that reminds you of the movies of yore, where we weren't afraid to put something viscerally violent on screen because there's an audience for it, there's movies out there for you. You just have to do some homework and find them. Sisu is one of those movies. And if you don't watch it, they're not going to keep making them. So
right.
go, it's currently on PVOD, which means for those of you who don't know, you can buy it or rent it online. Go do that. Go spend $1. Go watch Sisu. You'll thank me in the morning. All right, Ronnie.
Yep.
You ready to move on to the machine?
Let's get to Bert.
All righty. I actually just watched this yesterday morning, and boy, was this better than it had any right to be.
Yeah, I just watched it today.
Yeah.
And I will tell you this. Okay, so I want to get this in real quick.
Yep.
So, oh goodness gracious, things have gone awry with my computer. There we go. But I was a big fan of this story before I even knew who Bert Kreischer was.
Can I tell you, I saw Bert Kreischer earlier this year doing stand-up, and then he ran the trailer during his stand-up for the machine. I had no idea what the fuck he was talking about. I'd never heard of this. I'd never heard of this guy before. I kind of knew of a fat shirtless comedian, and I kept confusing him with Kevin James.
Yeah, okay. Not so much, but okay.
Yeah, but no clue. No clue about any of this.
Yeah. So I heard this story a long time ago, and I always wondered who he was, and I always wondered why he took his shirt off, because that's the only bit of his stand-up I ever really heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember how long ago that was, but I was like, man, that is a really funny story. And so later on, I found him again, and I realized that he's like much more famous than I thought. And he actually has more to his stand-up, which is, minus a few parts, is hysterical, especially when he starts making fun of his own daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really excited to see that they were going to make a movie out of this. And then the excitement kind of waned when I was like, man, this is going to be stupid. This is going to be not worth seeing. And then I watched it today, and I was like, this is so much better than it, like you said, than any that has any right being. And he is actually a very good actor.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, please continue, sir.
So some demographic information. Machine is a 2023 American action comedy film directed by Peter Atencio. And Peter Atencio has worked on The Rig, Keanu, the Keel and Peele movie with the cat. Yeah, the fucking cat. And then now The Machine. He's got some television credits. He worked on Last Man on Earth, Jean-Claude Van Johnson, Making History, Whiskey Cavalier, and 2020 is The Twilight Zone. So that's this guy again. Like this might be like the best thing he's like put out there, considering the rest of that stuff is not so great. Inspired by the 2016 stand-up routine of the same name, created by Bert Kreischer. It stars him as a fictionalized version of himself with Mark Hamill, who plays his dad, Jimmy Tatro, Eva Babich, Stephanie Kutsuba, and Jessica Gabor. Following its viral success, Legendary Entertainment acquired the rights of Kreischer's true story stand-up routine into a feature film adaptation in September of 2018. Most of the lead cast members were hired from April to June 21st, and filming began in Serbia in April 2021 through the Balkanic Media. It was released in the U.S. on May 26th by Sony. Received generally negative reviews from critics. All right.
Shocker.
Yeah. A little less than 2 hours. It had a budget of $20 million. It bombed. It only made 10.7 at the box office. And yes, it has a 27% with 22 critic reviews. I don't think anyone saw this is the issue. And then at 4.2 out of 10. And the Metacritic score was a 37 out of 100. Cinema score B+, which is generally not good. So I don't know. The story, without retelling his entire stand-up, is essentially he goes to the movie is told in two parallel timelines. One in which he is in college. He goes on this trip to Russia. He pals up with a bunch of Russian gangsters. He refers to himself as the Machine accidentally. He parties with them. They get him to rob his classmates on the train, and that's that story that got viral. But the movie begins with Bert as he is now in the present, and it's after whatever incident it was where his daughter got arrested for driving him home. So he's in therapy dealing with that. He's just kind of estranged from his daughter. He's having issues with his wife. And one of the things that was stolen was a watch. So the daughter of Russian mafia boss goes to Bert and says, you have to come back to Russia to find this watch. And Mark Hamill, who's his overcritical father, goes with him. Hilarity ensues. They have an adventure. It ends with Bert having learned lessons, reconciling with his father, and ultimately finding out that, there's a really great line in this movie about don't kill parts of yourself so that other parts can live. Find a way to make all the parts live together in harmony, which hit me really hard because, there are definitely some elements of me that I try to hide from people. I know saying that on this podcast, people are you for real? Yeah. It was this hour and a half that I get to talk is where you get to see a lot of my personality come out, but it's not a lot of personality I get to show people because I gotta live. And I can't be on all the time, but I certainly can understand and sympathize with this idea of there are different parts of you that make you a person, and you're almost encouraged in a lot of ways to hide those parts of yourself. So you're never truly living as your true self. And that's damaging, and it can hurt yourself and the people around you because you're not living the best. You're not living the best way for yourself and for them. And that's a lot of what the movie deals with. It also deals with the relationship between fathers and their children, specifically fathers and sons, but also, fathers and daughters, Bert and his kid. And having an overly critical father who I'm constantly seeking attention from, even at almost 50 and never getting it. I identified a lot with this, with what goes on with Bert and his dad in this movie. This movie hit me right where I feel. So what did you think of it?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a little more heartfelt than I thought it was going to be.
A lot more.
I say a little, but it was a lot more heartfelt than I thought it was going to be. He portrayed himself as a very serious person. He took his indiscretion of making his daughter lose her license and everything very seriously in this, and he stepped away from comedy and all that. And I was like, wow, this is a different turn than I thought it was going to be. I thought they were going to show up at him being silly at his daughter's birthday party or whatever it was. Now we know it's a birthday party, and then just kidnap him and go. No, there are serious problems with his relationship with his dad and his relationship with his daughter. And I was like, man, that's pretty heavy. And then, of course, it makes up for it later on. And it's just, there's some really funny moments in it. But I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, it was like one of those things where the language is foul. The violence is pretty grandiose at times.
I was going to say, we just talked about Sisu. The Machine's no slouch either.
Right.
Again, if you're looking for a viscerally violent action comedy, look no further than The Machine. I think it's also why it's not doing well with critics, because this isn't artsy like Sisu. But it's exactly the kind of movie that a lot of modern critics turn their nose up at. But it's the kind of movie you, me, Pat, Robert, men
will
love. We love movies like The Machine.
This is going to have a cult following.
Yeah,
as soon as it hits the $5.99 instead of you have to buy it right now on Amazon.
I was say it's $15 PVOD.
Yeah, so I didn't. I found a different way to watch it.
Yar.
But that's only because I don't want to pay $15 for it right now.
Yeah, sure.
But it's one of those things where but it would have, now that I realize how much I like it, it probably would have been worth the $15 to have. But I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, so the movie I'm thinking, even though it is a Seth Rogen film, that was better than it had any right to be, and it was a very violent comedy, action film, was Pineapple Express.
I have not seen that, but I've heard it's good.
It's very good, and it
Mhm.
reminds me a lot of it, in just the way of like, all of a sudden this funny little movie takes a turn and heads start exploding, and there's shootouts and everything else,
Mhm.
and which is handled very well. I mean, like, and the whole more human than human, where he just chugs a bottle of vodka and goes off
Mhm.
in a fight scene. It was one of those moments where I was like, this is pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. I really did.
Yeah, so first of all, like the visceral like violence and everything, the the action stuff, it's the kind of, like I said, it's the kind of stuff that we seek out and we don't get a lot of, we're starving
Yeah.
for. So because I didn't think that would be in this movie, I was really into it. I really enjoyed that stuff. It made me enjoy the movie that much more. But the stuff that I was keying into, both as a son and a father, the relationship between him and Mark Hamill, and Mark Hamill's like overly critical of him. It's like, I did this to protect you. You just seemed like you didn't take anything seriously, and you weren't a particularly focused person. You weren't a serious person, and I was trying to inspire you, as parents are supposed to do, to get your shit together and be a man, which I think is a lost concept in like modern culture.
Absolutely.
I sometimes feel like, especially with like the rise of like helicopter and lawnmower parenting, and the oversensitive nature of like treating kids like Fabergé eggs and whatnot. What gets lost is parents are supposed to model appropriate behavior and push their kids to be the best that they can be. And it's okay if they cry. Like, it's okay if a kid feels bad about himself. Like, you can overdo it. And I think that, the film does deal with that, where Mark Hamill maybe, didn't know when to turn it off, and it affected
how many times I was told to suck it up as a kid?
A lot. I believe me, dude. I still remember getting second degree burns from being out in the sun for too long, and my father having to put like stuff on me, and I'm like screaming because it hurt so much. He was like, "Good, I'm glad it hurts. That'll teach you a lesson. Don't do this again."
Goodness.
Parenting. But I think there's room in the middle between overdoing it and not being particularly sensitive to your kids, or being overly like too sensitive and treating the kids like, giving the kids way too much agency and letting them run the house. There's a place in the middle to exist. And I think the film talks really nicely about that, because the other side of that, is Bert really trying to, there's a great line that his daughter says. He's like, "I'm trying to be the best father I can for you." And she goes, "I'm glad you're like, once again, you're making this about yourself. Like, this isn't about being the best father because that's what's best for the daughter. It was about, I'm trying to make amends for the shitty things I did." And while you get Bert's frustration about not understanding why the kid reacted so poorly to it, but you also understand where the kid's coming from about, this isn't about, as The Undertaker said to Bret Hart, "Sometimes it ain't about you, motherfucker." Like, you have to realize that part of parenting is sacrifice. It's self-sacrifice. And, putting the kids first and making sure they're cared for. And it's sometimes at cost to yourself. And that's okay. That's the brilliance and the art of parenting. And I like that the movie touches on that. It's such a weird thing for me, and I think if there was like a through line about these movies, like what's the commonality besides my polyamory joke, was that these are weird movies to deal with these kinds of themes. Like, The Machine, a goofy story about a guy who robs his classmates on a Russian train, is your vehicle for dealing with the issues between children and their parents, and how that affects them throughout adulthood, and how, you pass on to almost like generational trauma. Barbie, odd choice, is your vehicle to deal with gender norms and patriarchy and feminism. Maybe not that last one, because that is a very Barbie thing, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then same thing with Sisu. It's like, it's like,
why would you put masculinity?
Why would you put these three movies together? Because these are great examples of how film is supposed to be about something. It's about, it is about the human condition and existence, and you're supposed to talk about those things in film, not just have a car swing on a vine from, across a chasm. That's a joke about Fast and the Furious 9, everybody.
Yeah. Everybody take a drink.
All right. I love The Machine. I think it's an utterly misunderstood movie by people who just don't like violent movies. And because, it wasn't artsy like Sisu, it got shit on. But I would highly recommend to anyone who, the sound of my voice, go watch The Machine. You will not be disappointed. My wife, who is not like a huge, thinker about movies, not a huge fan of the kinds of stuff that I like to watch, loved The Machine. So, it's one of those where I think it should have done better than it did based on audience appeal. And I bet if more people give it a chance, it'll become a cult classic.
Well, yeah. I said that, and people are sleeping. Okay, I don't agree with critics most, like 99% of the time. This.
Sure.
99.9% of the time. And when I see movies like this, like I said, I compared it to Pineapple Express, which in its own right is a kind of a cult classic. This one has everything behind it to be a cult classic. I mean, just because of like you said, it takes people by surprise with the action in it, and the acting's good. I mean, it's Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill's phenomenal in this. He's probably the best part of this movie in terms of performance.
Yeah, and Bert's no slouch either, though.
No, Bert's very vulnerable in this. He's really good.
Yeah, he's really good. So this, like, I'm with you on this. If you get a chance, watch it, and just be prepared. But but I mean, he lights a cigar off an AK-47. How much more man do you need than that?
If you get any more manlier, you're gonna get somebody pregnant watching this.
Right. So we have to tone it down a little
bit. All right. I think that's a great place. I think when I start making jokes about that, we need to end the podcast. So what do you think?
Okay.
All right, folks, that is our review of Sisu, Barbie, and the Machine, or Barbie, Sisu, and the Machine, if you actually read it off the title that I chose for tonight. I had a really good time talking to you, Ronnie. I was a little. I have to admit, because I knew how you were coming in hot, and I knew that this is one of those where, like, nope, this is beautiful art, and I will accept nothing less than blind obedience to my opinion. So, I figured we were gonna clash, but I love you, brother. This is how discussions happen among friends.
Right back at you. And after this, I'm probably just going to yell at you for a while.
That's fine. I will continue to ignore you like I always do.
I'm kidding. You what?
I'll continue to ignore you like I always do.
Oh, yeah, that's right. True.
All right. Tomorrow, speaking of ignoring people, Damn You Hollywood, we'll be giving the full weight and breadth of the Damn You Hollywood experience to Oppenheimer, the second half of the Barbenheimer experience. So tomorrow, if you were like, you didn't talk enough about how successful Barbie is, fucking wait, people. I got a formula here.
Your New York is showing.
Thank you. I like to whip my New York out and show it to people. They have to stand far back. So anyway, tomorrow, Oppenheimer, 9:00. We'll do the money and we'll talk about Barbie and Oppenheimer and all the rest of the worldwide box office. Thursday, the second attempt at this is the Barrera Morales trilogy on the history of boxing, assuming Pat remembers and we actually do it. So we'll do that. Friday, the good boys over at Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do. They'll be doing their review of The Outlaws on Netflix and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destitution. And then we start no, fuck off. And then we kick it into high gear with our Ninja Turtles coverage, as that comes out a week from Friday. No, it comes out this Friday, along with Haunted Mansion, I think. No, I would say it's 2 weeks from, because the Meg comes out on the 4th. And
that's right.
Yeah. So we've got some old Ninja Turtles stuff that we're going to be releasing. Everyone loves the bad guy. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a Saturday. Sunday, we'll take a break from the Metal Hammer of Doom from 2015 and re-air our Long Road to Ruin, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles trilogy from 1990 through 1993. Go Ninja, go Ninja, go! Right, Ronnie?
I love the first two, and I don't know what you mean by trilogy. The other one, what?
Yes, indeed. Because I love Robert Winfrey and he loves me. We're going to talk about The Idol that ran for 5 episodes on HBO. And then Jason,
you're an evil man.
I am a wonderful human being. And then Jason and I, we're supposed to do this a month ago. We had to delay it. We're going to be talking the Lake Placid series on Long Road to Ruin.
Oh,
And
nice.
then a week from tomorrow, Damn You Hollywood, Haunted Mansion, the remake of the movie based on the amusement park ride at Disney World. So that's what we got going on here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. Ronnie Adams of the Screaming Boy Podcast. Show them where you pissed from.
Well, no. I don't do a whole lot right now. I am revamping things. I am reworking things. And I'm trying to see if I can get some games going online. But normally, I still do, but I almost say used to. I do live D&D play streams on Twitch as Misfits and Miscreants. I also have an old podcast called Screaming Boy Productions, which is still up on iTunes. So if you want to listen to that and you say, hey, this is not bad, let me know. And maybe we'll start some stuff again. And if it's terrible, don't let me know because I don't like criticism.
It's true. I have 2.5, 3 years of source material to back that up.
I don't like your criticism, especially, sir.
I was mean. I go back and listen to some of those gag reels from back then. Yo, it's a wonder you didn't just fly down to Tampa and punch me right in the face.
Because I know you didn't mean it.
Not a word. All right, folks. Thank you for our friends and close friends and girlfriends and whatnot that tuned in tonight because they wanted to hear us argue about Barbie. Really appreciate you. I don't try to push my podcast on people in my personal life because I don't want to be that guy. But as I try to tell people, I don't want to talk about my cancer and I don't want to talk about my relationships and I don't want to talk about anything. I would love to talk about the shit I talk about on my podcast, though. I would love to know what people think of my podcast. I would love to talk about my podcast. So for people who actually watched it and support us, do know that of all the things you can do to make me happy, like watching and talking about this stuff with me, that's the ticket. So for those that tuned in tonight, because Barbie is what brought you to the dance, I truly do appreciate it. And that's no joke. That comes from the bottom of my heart. So I don't really thank my audience at all. That's usually Robert's thing. And I kind of like, I'm very, very, indifferent. Watch, don't watch. I don't give a shit. No, the truth is it hurts. It hurts, people. I want you to watch and I want you to talk to me.
He also doesn't like criticism, but no.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, check us out, w2mnet.com. I threw up my TikTok there at Mark Radulich. Right now, you can hear me sing shirtless. Speaking of shirtless fat guys, sing shirtless at the local nude resort here in Florida, in the Tampa area. I did. I used to love her by Guns N' Roses. You Give Love a Bad Name by Bon Jovi, and by request, Big Balls by AC/DC. So, if you'd like to watch a shirtless fat guy passive aggressively yell at people through singing, please give my TikTok a look. You can also see my concert footage and 10-minute segments of any one of these podcasts that I pull out and throw up there. So support me on TikTok, everybody. And support Ronnie Adams wherever he may roam. He's also on TikTok.
Yeah, Misfits and Miscreants on TikTok. Same thing on Twitch and Instagram.
All right, folks. For Ronnie Adams of the Screaming Boy Podcast, good to his mother, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.